Hello, everybody. Happy Friday, and I hope everybody is doing great and excited about this weekend. Today we are joined by Dave Wilkerson, who is one of our faculty from the School of Social Work. And we are really excited to have him. We're really excited to have you guys. So without further ado, Dave, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Amanda. Hello, everybody. My understanding is we've got folks here from all over Kentucky. I guess we have Boone, Owen, Shelby County, Bourbon County, Carter County. So welcome to everybody. I'm going to talk for a little bit about a topic dear to my heart. I'm a professor here in the School of Social Work at Northern Kentucky University, and I'm particularly interested in social work and mental health. So I've got some slides I'm going to share with you. We're going to take a little 6-question quiz at the end, not over the slides, but a quiz to kind of look at what your understanding is about some questions related to mental health. And with that, let me get my slide presentation pulled up here, and let's see if we can get started. And here we are. Hopefully everybody can see this. Social workers are everywhere people need help. So I have been in social work for 35 years. I have worked in the field for most of those 35 years, and I've been here at NKU teaching for about 11 years now. But I want to take a look at what social work is really about and how it fits in here at NKU, and then how it fits into your communities. Here is where you would be coming if you were coming to a live actual tour, actual field trip to NKU. This is our college. This is where the College of Health and Human Services is located. This is where a lot of our simulation labs are. Again, it's unfortunate that you guys can't come and see some of the cool equipment and some of the laboratories that we use to train students in the health professions here, but maybe that'll happen in the future. So this is where we're located. This is me. I started working in social work back in 1985. We did have automobiles back then, but it was a long time ago. And one of the things I wanted to share with you are the different, we call them populations, that I have worked with. In my career, I've worked in foster care. So a lot of times when people talk about social work or social workers, the first thing that comes to people's minds is the foster care field, or social workers are the folks who investigate child abuse and neglect. They are also the people who make arrangements to remove children from homes and place them in foster care. So this is, when I ask friends, like, what do you think of when you think of social work? This is often what comes to mind. And when I've done this kind of talk for high school and junior high students, that field comes to mind for them as well. But the kind of the take-home message and the topic for today is that social workers are in a lot of different agencies, a lot of different fields, and I want to explore some of those. So in addition to working in foster care and doing child abuse investigations and placing children, I also have worked at residential treatment centers for youth with emotional problems. I've worked in the intellectual and developmental disabilities field for a number of years when I was at Children's Hospital in Cincinnati. I've worked with folks who have severe mental illness. These are disorders like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and I've spent a great deal of my career as a psychotherapist, providing counseling and therapy to people. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because as a professor here, one of the things I focus on is teaching people how to do therapy, how to do counseling with clients. So we'll talk more about that. I did my graduate training in a sex offender treatment program. I've also worked with folks who have disabilities around sexuality issues. I've run substance use treatment programs, and I've worked in court programs. I've worked in prisons, and I've worked in jails, trying to identify people who find themselves in jail or prison who also have mental illness and trying to connect them with services in the community so that they can get out of prison or jail and stay out of prison or jail. So again, my teaching areas are really currently focused on teaching students therapy skills. I teach assessment and diagnosis. How do you diagnose mental disorders in folks? And I'm also interested in substance use disorders and the treatment of those disorders. So that's a little bit about me. One of the things I want to share with you is that social work is what we consider a health profession, or sometimes called an allied health profession. So I've sort of just listed here all the types of professions that are considered health professions. The most commonly known are doctors or physicians, dentists, nurses. These types of professions are something people quickly associate as a health profession. But there are so many other professions that provide health care or behavioral health care, and social work is kind of tucked in here in the middle, in the midst of all these other professions. But there are lab technicians, athletic trainers are considered health professionals, EMTs, paramedics, occupational therapists. So within this large group of health professions falls social workers. Again, not a profession oftentimes associated with healthcare. So again, when I talk about professions, here's what I mean by a profession. People go to school, they get training, they get education, they may then be required, or oftentimes are required by the state they're going to work in. They're required to take a test. We call these state board examinations, and they must pass that test in order to practice the health profession that they identify with. Sometimes, in addition to passing that test, folks are required to have more training and supervision. And in social work, once you pass the state board exam, you're required to get at least another 2 years of training and supervision before you can become independently licensed. So after the education and the testing, people become professionals once they obtain a certification, a certificate, or a license in their field. And so not unlike doctors or nurses, social workers also are licensed professionals. So what do social workers do? They're really, as my first slide said, social workers can be found everywhere. They do a lot of different jobs. They're in a lot of different agencies. And I want to take a few minutes and look at some of that. I spent 11 years working with folks who have disabilities. This is a slide of someone in what we would call a vocational work setting for folks with developmental intellectual disabilities. Not often thought that social workers would be involved in these types of jobs, but I met many other social workers working in this field, and worked in this field myself for, as I said, over a decade. So helping folks with disabilities is one place. And some place that you may be aware of where you could find social workers are in schools. There is a service called School-Based Therapy, where students can get counseling in school from credentialed, licensed social workers and counselors to talk about mental health problems, emotional problems. I supervised a number of social workers who have done what we call school-based therapy. Students during a free period in school can come and talk to them and process things that are going on with them, get some help and some problem solving skills for emotional or other types of problems they might be struggling with. And it all happens right in the school. My hope is that the schools that you attend also have these kind of services. My sense is school-based therapy is pretty prevalent throughout Kentucky. If you're interested at all in seeing someone in school, and I realize a lot of schools are virtual now, but my understanding is that school-based therapists are seeing students still, but they're doing it over Zoom, over FaceTime, over the telephone. They're doing what we call teletherapy. So these services are hopefully still available. to you. And as I said, I think the school counselors are typically the point of contact for you if you have an interest in getting connected with a school-based therapist. They work with your guardian or your parents on getting you connected. So reach out to your school counselor if you're interested. Social workers are also oftentimes in what are being called student service centers or youth service centers that are located within middle schools, high schools. And I've worked with a number of students and a number of social workers who do their work, again, in school settings, assisting students and assisting their families. So schools, another location where you can find social workers. Not often recognized, but a growing number of social workers are working actually on police forces and working in police departments. We have a really unique program up here in Northern Kentucky, and the Alexandria Police Department has had social workers on staff for, I think, a couple years now. And it's also a great opportunity because many of the students in our social work program here at NKU are able to do their field placement, or they're able to do internships with the police officers at the Alexandria Police Department, and they get great experience. So there's been some talk in the news and elsewhere about all of the demands that are placed on police officers these days. The police officers that I've talked to and worked with over the years welcome having social workers and other social service providers partnering with them, because the police officers aren't always trained to deal with the kind of problems that they get called to. Many times they get called to homes where there is drug addiction or alcohol abuse happening. Sometimes they're called to homes where an individual may have mental illness and is suffering from mental illness. And a number of problems that social workers can assist with are encountered by police. So this partnership that really Dr. Tara McClendon here, one of my colleagues, is very active in getting social workers involved with the Alexandria Police Department. This has also grown, and I believe also the Erlanger Police Department now has social workers on staff who actually go on calls with them. One of the values here is once the police have completed their work on the call to the scene, the social workers can go back, check in with the individuals who were part of that police call, see if they need assistance. Sometimes folks need housing, sometimes they need to get into treatment programs, sometimes they need food. So the follow-up that the social worker can do really complements the work the police are doing and really frees the police up to do other aspects of their job, which they would report they are better equipped to do. Are there any questions I should be pausing for at this point? Okay.
I don't see any questions in the chat, but I did share a link to the recent article about the Alexandria Police Force, and which they interviewed Dr. Tara McClendon.
Awesome. Thank you, Carolyn. You are on top of it. Yes, it's a great program. And as I said, we've had a number of students who are in our school program here who have done their field work at the Alexandria Police Department. So thank you for that. So again, not really recognized, but another place so you can find social workers are within police departments. I've had a number of students that I've worked with who have done their training with the American Red Cross, but social workers are very actively involved in helping people during disasters, oftentimes natural disasters, hurricanes, tornadoes, more recently the widespread forest fires on the West Coast. The American Red Cross, that is very much a volunteer organization, has for years also employed social workers who head up these teams that go out into communities after disasters, helping people pull their lives back together. So as you can see from this picture, as I'm sure you've seen on the news many times, and some of you maybe have experienced if you've had tornadoes in your communities, people can absolutely have everything wiped out and need a lot of assistance. Then additionally, one area that social workers are very active in is in helping the homeless. So this is obviously a picture of a homeless shelter. My son is a social worker and he works on a homeless outreach team. These social workers go into the community a couple times a month. They go to the places where homeless people live in the community. Sometimes this is city parks, sometimes this is living under overpasses, highway overpasses. There are actually some homeless camps in certain parts of the Cincinnati area here where my son and the folks on his team go to reach out to the homeless folks and try to get them more permanent housing. Many folks who are homeless also struggle with mental illness and psychiatric problems. The outreach workers that do the homeless outreach also try to connect folks with appropriate service providers, medications, psychiatrists to help folks who might be homeless and also struggling with mental illness. And then additionally, a lot of folks who are living on the streets may also be struggling with substance use problems, drug addiction, alcohol dependence, these sort of things. So again, social workers are very actively involved in trying to engage people who are homeless and get them into programs that can help them obtain more permanent housing. Next is another place that I worked for a number of years through a mental health court program. Social workers are very active in the criminal justice system, not just on the police forces, but working with probation and parole and literally working with detention centers, county jails, and state prisons to get individuals out of jail and help them stay out of jail. My work in this area was really focused on people who had mental health problems, people who had mental illness, who find themselves in jail or prison. The jails become a place where folks with mental illness find themselves way too frequently. The folks who run the jails and prisons collaborated with us as a social work team and really were excited to have us involved getting people out of jail who had mental illness, connecting them with appropriate services so they could get the therapy and the treatment and the medications they needed so that they didn't wind up back in jail. As with the police, many of the folks in probation, parole, and in the prisons and jails don't pretend to understand how to treat mental illnesses. It's not what they're trained to do. They're better at other types of jobs. So the program, and I've worked with a couple programs that I've been involved in, we're really actively involved in going into jails, doing assessments on people, working with the judges to get folks out of jail into the community and back into treatment. So those are some of the more exciting programs that I've been a part of, but not something that people typically think social workers are involved in. And as I mentioned from the outset, one of the most common things that people associate social workers with is foster care. But a very important part of social work and a significant number of social workers are involved in helping children and families who are struggling. If this is through abuse, neglect, or other types of problems that children are having, social workers through the state agencies and through private foster care and through private children's services agencies, a lot of social workers are involved in helping children who are having emotional or behavioral problems get back on their feet. Also placing children out of their homes, sometimes due to safety reasons, but also working on reunification plans to get children back to the homes of their biological parents if at all possible. So again, probably the most well-known place that folks recognize social workers. Social workers are also very active in nursing homes. People go to nursing homes to recover sometimes from surgeries, and then so they're temporarily placed in nursing homes. And then folks live longer term in nursing homes as well. All nursing homes have some social workers involved to assist with accessing services and to coordinate with family members who may have a loved one living in the nursing home. Treating addictions. This is an area I worked in for a number of years as a social worker, doing therapy and counseling and administering programs for folks who have substance use problems. That's what we call it now, and treating people who have addictions. Everyone is probably familiar that heroin has been a significant problem in Kentucky and in the states surrounding Kentucky for a number of years. We're also aware that methamphetamine has made a robust comeback. So one of the areas, again, that social workers find themselves employed is in the addictions field and assisting people who have substance use disorders. Some other social workers are involved working in the military. One of the I got many flyers and mailings from the U.S. Armed Services when I became a social worker and got my license, trying to recruit me to come and work in the military, on military bases, and sometimes even being deployed to combat areas. Folks who are in combat, as many of you I'm sure are well aware of, experience a lot of trauma and traumatic experiences. Soldiers are at very high risk, those exposed to combat, to develop post-traumatic stress disorder. Social workers are very active and heavily staffed at the Veterans Administration, providing treatment to combat veterans who have experienced trauma and are struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. Along with post-traumatic stress disorder comes substance use problems. So social workers are actually recruited to become members of the military, officers oftentimes if they have master's degrees, and can have an entire career working in the military. So this is Fort Riley, Kansas. This is my brother's retired from the Army, so he was stationed at Fort Riley, so I chose this picture. Brief pause for any questions.
So you did get one. It's, do social workers get training in safety protocols while on a call with officers? And then a follow-up to that, is there a mortality rate for them?
Well, to answer the first question, yes, indeed, they get a lot of training about safety protocols. It's a very well coordinated program. Social workers are not put in harm's way. The police officers are in charge of evaluating and clearing the scene, so to speak, meaning it's safe for social workers to engage with the folks involved in the police call. So yes, there's very extensive training in that. The question about mortality, I'm not sure I'm fully understanding that question. So I'm going to leave that one on the shelf, and then maybe as we start to wrap up, that individual can reiterate that question or rephrase that question, and I'll try to come back to that.
Dave, you do have one more question, and
Yeah.
You may want to skip this. Sorry, my dogs are very excited about the UPS guy. What's your favorite part of being a social worker?
Well, thanks. That's a good question. My favorite part of being a social worker is literally all the different types of jobs I've been able to have. You know, people in my family joke and they'll say, well, Dave has trouble keeping a job longer than 4 or 5 years. I've had jobs for 10 and 11 years, but one of the wonderful things is I've been able to work with so many people in so many different fields and areas. That's what I really get excited about. And in turn, that's kind of why I've put this presentation together, hopefully to encourage other people to look into social work as a possible career, because it's not just working in foster care. So relative to this slide here, I ran a court program for 5 years where we trained NKU social work students to, again, go into jails, get people with mental illness out of the jails, get them connected with community mental health providers. We worked directly with judges. My social work staff and students had to present cases to judges in court, updating the judges on how clients were doing since we had gotten them out of jail. This is really cool stuff, and that was one of my favorite programs that I'd worked with, was this mental health court program, where the judges, probation officers, parole officers, and the folks in the jails work together to get these folks out of jail. Because many of them were not dangerous criminals, but were, committing repeated minor offenses, loitering, public intoxication, these kind of things. And what we found is getting them treatment for their mental illness actually saved the state money that they would have been spending housing these folks in jail or prison. So my favorite part is just the variety. One of my favorite populations to work with are folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I did that for over a decade, but again, you see how different that job is from the job of working with the courts. So really exciting for me to be able to have such flexibility to work in so many different fields. So again, I mentioned the program that my son works in, where they're doing outreach in the communities, trying to identify people who are homeless, who may have a substance use problem, who may have mental illness, and trying to get them connected with services. Social workers are really, they're everywhere, as I had mentioned, but they are very much integrated into the communities where people live. I'm kind of then, the last couple slides here are really focused on providing mental health therapy, because this is what I've really become interested in as a professor here in the School of Social Work at Northern Kentucky University, is training my graduate students. So social work involves getting an undergraduate degree, which is a 4-year degree, and then you can go on to get a master's degree, where people begin receiving training to actually do mental health therapy. And my interest in this has really grown since we built the Health Innovation Center, and we have a lot of the learning laboratories up there that I use to actually teach my students how to be therapists, how to do effective mental health counseling. But providing therapy to individuals and to couples is another place that social workers are very involved in, and insurance companies reimburse social workers as therapists. So sometimes people think therapists are psychiatrists or psychologists, but I got a slide here in a minute that'll show you most often therapists and people working in mental health are social workers. One of my favorite things to do is group therapy, and I teach a class on how to do groups, how to run groups. I do that again in one of our labs. We call it the apartment over in the Health Innovation Center. So in addition to doing individual therapy and doing couples therapy, social workers are also very involved in running groups to treat a number of issues. I've run groups around anxiety and depression. I've run bipolar support groups. I've run substance use groups. And I've also run groups for people who find themselves in trouble with the criminal justice system, and groups around helping to keep them out of the criminal justice system. So this is the apartment that I just touched on a few minutes ago. This is where, again, when we're all back in the normal world where we're going to school and everybody sees each other, I would teach my groups class and do a lab in this apartment. We would circle chairs around. You can't see it, but there's a control room over here to the left. And you can see we have cameras here. The room is wired for audio so that I could directly observe the students while they run groups with each other, and I can do direct laboratory practice training with them, teaching them the skills they need to do group counseling, group therapy, and to run support groups once they get into the community. So we sometimes call this the Big Brother apartment, or at least I call it the Big Brother apartment. But it's really cool. And one of the cooler things is, you know, when people literally visit us, we can take a tour of this, but also come over here and kind of see the control room, which is really exciting for me. We have some great technology. So this is where I teach the mental health skills. And just in closing, the number of social workers involved in the mental health field is about 200,000. So social workers comprise more mental health workers than all of the psychiatrists, all of the psychologists, and all the psychiatric nurses combined. So again, when people think of, oh, I might need counseling, or I might want to get mental health therapy, they typically think I might be going to a psychologist, or I might be going to a counselor, or I might be going to a psychiatrist. But in reality, the odds are you may be seeing a social worker more readily than you would see one of these other professions, because there are so many social workers involved in the mental health field. So again, pausing briefly for any questions, I'm going to wrap this up with like a little quiz about your awareness of mental health issues. This comes from a toolkit for teenagers and young people, developed actually in England, but it's a brief quiz with some questions. I think you'll be able to answer this through polling, if I'm correct. And it takes a look at what your current knowledge base is about mental health awareness. And then I've got a few slides for you if you want more information about mental health. If you're struggling with mental health yourself, I have some phone numbers for you to call, some websites you can access, and then I think a final slide with more information about social work. So if we can, here we go. What percentage of young people between the ages of 11 and 15 will experience mental health problems? So again, question number one, what percentage of young people between the ages of 11 and 15 will experience mental health problems? So I think you can answer this, and I'm not sure where we are with how the polling works exactly.
It should be a little kind of pop up for them. They should be able to actually look at the questions and start kind of plugging in their answers. If anybody's having an issue, please throw that up in the chat or even the Q&A.
Will we get a tally, Amanda, at the end?
Yeah, it should give us a tally of how many people clicked on it. See, there we go. We're starting. People were just kind of figure it out. But yeah, it should give us like a tally and a percentage account for all of them. Oh, they're answering all the questions at once. Okay. So
yeah, okay, that's fine.
Unleash.
So why don't I just go ahead and just kind of go through all the questions and just ask people to take a couple minutes and finish this. Does that sound better?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So then question number 2 is, when released in the body, chemicals called endorphins make people feel happy and full of energy. What do we need to do to release endorphins? That's the next question. So feel free to go ahead and answer as many questions as you can. I think there's only 5 or 6 total.
If
Yeah.
you guys are having issues, maybe I don't know if you're on a computer or a phone or an iPad, but if you see the bottom black bar, there's normally a cue. It's got like a bunch of different little things that you can click on. If you click on polls, it should pop up.
So are we getting a pretty, does it seem like most people are connecting in some way to the polling?
We've got 33 out of 85, and it keeps going up. There's a few people that are saying they can't see the poll, so I'm trying to figure out.
Okay.
Should be open, and they should be able to see it. Look.
So I think while you're working on that, I think what I'm going to go to my slides and just go ahead and go through each of the questions. I think I can do this, and at least read through the questions with everybody. So again, question 1 we already looked at. If you're having trouble polling, maybe write these answers down, and I'll go back and go through the correct answers here in a minute. So again, question 1 is, what percentage of people between the ages of 11 and 15 will experience mental health problems? A is 13% of boys, 10% of girls. B is 20% of girls, 12% of boys, 5% of boys, 10% of girls, or none of the above. The next question about endorphins is, when released in the body, chemicals called endorphins make people feel happy and full of energy. What do we need to do to release them? A, sleep. B, exercise. C, laughter. D, all of the above. E, B, and C. F, none of the above. My students always hate me because I do the B and C thing. So question 2 is about endorphins that get released, and what do we need to do to make those chemicals present in our bodies. Street drugs can cause symptoms that look like mental illnesses. True or false? That's the third question. Some street drugs can cause symptoms that look like mental illnesses. Question 4. People with mental health problems are dangerous to other people. True or false? And then question 5. Here we go. I've got the polling is starting to come up. This is really nifty. Yeah, the answers that people were giving. Most young people say they can talk to their friends about their mental health problems. True or false? Most young people say they can talk to their friends about their mental health problems. True or false? And then question 6, which group of college students are at highest risk for developing eating disorders? A, musicians. B, athletes. C, science students. D, art students. E, all of the above. So those are the questions. Let me go back to my original slide here. Here we go.
Relaunch the polling just for the people who couldn't. It should be an automatic pop-up. So if you're not seeing it, I know that Chromebook, if you have those, they said that those have limitations during Zoom, and a few other things. I'm not really entirely for sure, but it should just be like a thing that pops up and prompts you to answer the polling question. So I'm sorry for everybody who wants to participate and can't, but maybe we can figure this out next time.
Amanda, I'm wondering, I had polling results showing up on my screen a second ago, but it went back
It's
to the,
because I reopened the poll just to see
I
if
see,
anybody could
I
get
see.
so this way,
Well,
if
we're
you
run,
answered it, feel free to answer again, or you can just kind of sit back. It's the same poll.
yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and touch on the answers because we're getting a little close on time here, if that's okay. Does that make sense? So, let's touch on some of the answers. Question number one, what percentage of young people, 11 to 15, will experience a mental health problem? The correct answer is A, or 13% of boys, 10% of girls. So if you answered that, I'm looking very forward to you coming here to study social work with me. No, I'm just kidding. The next question, the answer, when released in the body, chemical endorphins make people feel happy and full of energy. So what do we need to do to release them? The correct answer here is exercise and laughter. Some people may have put all of the above. Sleep is very important to mental health. Adequate amount of sleep is important, but actually laughter releases these endorphins, and exercise are the things that release the endorphins. I just lost that. The question number 7, some street drugs can cause symptoms similar to mental health issues, true or false? The answer to that is true. One of the things we have to train our students to do when they do diagnostic assessments is to rule out or make sure the person hasn't been using drugs or alcohol. One substance that people don't always think about that can mimic mental health issues is caffeine. And caffeine is in soda pop, caffeine is in coffee, there are now energy drinks. Caffeine can cause symptoms that look like anxiety. Marijuana can cause paranoia, which looks like what we call psychotic or schizophrenic types of symptoms. And a number of drugs and alcohol in particular can cause symptoms that look like depression. So the answer is some street drugs, methamphetamine can look like what we call a manic episode. So street drugs, in fact, can look like mental health or mental illness symptoms. People with mental health problems are dangerous to other people. This is false. And if you really take anything away from here, please take away that people with mental illness are far less likely to commit violent crimes than people without mental illness. The majority of violent crimes and homicides are committed by people who don't have mental illness or mental health problems. People with mental health problems are more dangerous to themselves than they are to others. 90% of people who die through suicide, this is in Britain, are experiencing mental health distress. And so people with mental health problems are of more risk to themselves than they are to other people. I think sometimes folks don't always know that, so I think it's an important thing to remember. Oh, you guys, you guys are knocking these out of the park. Then here, the question I just read about people being dangerous. See, you guys are like most people where your impression is that folks with mental health problems are dangerous to other people. There's just not data to support that. So then finally, most people say they can talk to their friends about their mental health problems. And let's see what you guys have in terms of polling. You have, it's about, you guys are right down the middle there. About half of you put true, half of you put false. The answer is false. Nearly 3 out of 4 people who are adolescents fear kind of what the reactions are going to be if they share their mental health problems with their friends. If you're fortunate enough that you're able to talk about emotional or mental health problems with your friends, that's a great thing. But when surveyed, most teenagers, most adolescents will say they're really inclined not to talk to their friends about it. And then the final question, which group of college students are at highest risk for developing eating disorders? 40% of you put athletes, and then about 50% of you put all of the above. You guys are in the ballpark. The folks that put athletes are right on the money. Athletes are at highest risk for developing eating disorders among research that's been done with college students. And it might be for reasons that are pretty clear to you. Athletes are required to stay fit. Weighing in certain sports like wrestling are just part and parcel of the athletic competition. So athletes can be at high risk for developing eating disorders. Folks that put all of the above, I get where you're coming from. A number of other student categories who are college students are at risk. But the correct answer there is athletes. So you guys actually did a good job on this. I'm very impressed. Again, if you're interested in mental health or social work, I'm going to put some slides up. My understanding is this information I'm offering now, mental health resources in Kentucky, and more information about social work will be available to you guys after this presentation in some form. So don't feel like you need to memorize this. I tried to put the main mental health numbers for you guys by the counties as I was given them, the folks that would be participating. Each county has a crisis line or a 24-hour access line if you or someone you know would like to reach out and get some mental health assistance, some counseling, and assistance for mental health problems and or substance use or addiction problems. So as you can see, each of these counties has a mental health program and a number associated with that. There are also national resources available. This is a national suicide prevention line, 1-800-273-TALK. These are 24-hour suicide prevention lines. And then if you're interested in just some apps for your phone or device, our Health Counseling and Wellness Center here on campus, you can click on this link and they have links that you can go to download apps on your phone, apps that can help you manage your anxiety, apps that can help you manage your depressive symptoms. These apps are not a substitution for counseling or therapy, but are things that folks might find helpful who are also participating in counseling or therapy. And then finally, if you want more information about social work, you can go to the National Association of Social Workers website. There's tons of information there. Or you can come and check out our School of Social Work website here at NKU, and there's the link for that. I am looking at my clock. It says it's about 11:53, so we're really down to the wire here. Just kind of leaving it open to, I guess, a few questions. I don't know where we are with that.
So there's no new questions in the Q&A or the chat. If you do want to have if you do have a question for Dave, feel free to put it in either of those, or if you raise your hand, I can unmute you and you can ask the question directly.
So again, we're excited. Hopefully, if some of you are haven't graduated and are still in school next year, we hopefully will be around and can have you on campus live. There's some really cool stuff to see up here, places where we do the trainings for our students, some of the operating rooms and exam rooms, and some of the mannequins that we have that simulate various illnesses. So we're hopeful that that can happen again soon.
I think they've gone shy. What we can do you have any like major hobbies? We can just ask some personable questions.
Do I have major hobbies?
Yeah.
I have major and minor hobbies. I ride motorcycles. That's my main hobby. I also I'm an avid photographer. Like to take pictures. And since COVID, I've gotten really good at yard work. Something that my wife is very happy about. Um, and it's one of the safer things I'm able to do, which is kind of tinker around in the yard. She has to watch me with a chainsaw though, because I get a little excited. I love it, love a good chainsaw, and I may cut down things I'm not supposed to sometimes. So.
We did end up getting a question. So Jean said, you say there are so many resources for people to get help, but how do you reach out to people who don't necessarily want to come to you to get help?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are really in this field. We are at the mercy of the person saying, "I want help." Over the years, I've gotten pretty good at talking people into or presenting people with the options of getting help. Um, that is not to say, though, that I certainly appreciate that there are a number of people out there who maybe need the help, but they're not ready, or they can't see that they need the help. Um, and I would say reach out to some of these mental health resources for assistance in trying to convey to folks who don't appreciate that they need the help. Um, Sometimes these agencies can coach you along in terms of making it easier for the person to get to the help. A lot of agencies are doing telehealth now. We're meeting with people over Zoom. We're doing therapy over the internet because of the COVID-19. And sometimes that's made it easier for people to reach out for help. Folks who would have to drive long distances to get to a counseling office can sometimes just jump on the internet and connect with people. So I understand it is a very difficult thing. There's no simple answer to that question in terms of how to get people engaged. I guess I would say kind of don't give up on the person and continue to provide opportunities for them to get the help they need if possible.
All right. So I don't see any new questions. With that, we'll just close out. We'll close out your session. And thank you for coming, Dave. It was really great to hear all of this valuable information. It was really great to kind of just see you and virtually. And if you guys do have any questions, feel free to get them to us, and then we can always pass those along to Dave. And